Chasing her down low is Richardson and Hodge. Here comes Adaejah Hodge and Sha'Carri Richardson.
A 20-year-old college sophomore just ran a time in a preliminary heat that pushed her into the top 5 fastest women in the entire history of the sport. Not at the Olympics, not in a Diamond League final, in a prelim at a college meet. And the record she obliterated to get there belonged to one of the most famous sprinters alive, Sha'Carri Richardson. Richardson set the NCAA women's 100-meter record back in 2019 as a true freshman at LSU. 10,075 seconds, a mark that became one of the most iconic numbers in collegiate track and field. 7 years, multiple Olympic cycles, dozens of the fastest women on earth passing through the NCAA system. Nobody got close. Hold that number in your head, 10,075. Because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why one performance in Eugene, Oregon left the entire sprinting world stunned, and why Sha'Carri Richardson's name is now permanently tied to the kid who broke her. If a stat line like that doesn't earn a like and a subscribe to Speed Academics, nothing will. Go ahead and hit both right now, because the story behind how she got there is even wilder than the number itself.
I love track and field. I've been doing it since I was 5 years old. So every day I come out on the track, it's just me enjoying my time and just enjoying track and field, man.
First, you need to know where Adaejah Hodge actually came from. She was born in 2006 in Tortola, in the British Virgin Islands, a small Caribbean territory of fewer than 35,000 people. Not exactly a factory for future world-class sprinters. She was raised primarily by her mother, Adaejah Hodge, alongside her siblings. Around age 9, her family relocated to Douglasville, Georgia, just outside Atlanta. New country, new school system, new culture, and for a 9-year-old, that's not a small adjustment. That's an entire identity in transition. She kept one foot in both worlds, representing her home territory, the British Virgin Islands, on the international stage, while growing up and training inside the American sprinting machine of suburban Atlanta. That dual identity ended up defining her entire career, flying back and forth between Carifta Championships representing a tiny island nation and high school invitationals against some of the best prep talent in the United States. By the time she reached Montverde Academy in Florida for high school, the talent was undeniable. In 2022, at the Commonwealth Games in Jamaica, she became the first British Virgin Islander ever to win the Austin Seeley Award, given to the most outstanding athlete at the entire meet. She was 16. In 2023, still in high school, Hodge set the world U20 indoor 200-meter record, running 22:33 at the New Balance Indoor Championships in Boston. She competed in the semifinals of the 200 meters at the Senior World Athletics Championships in Budapest as a teenager against grown women who had been professionals for years. Then came 2024. At the World U20 Championships in Lima, Peru, Hodge won gold in the 200 and silver in the 100. A few weeks later, she walked into the Olympic Games in Paris, carrying her nation's flag at the opening ceremony. The British Virgin Islands representative on the biggest stage in sports, at just 18 years old. 5 individual age group records, a World U20 champion, an Olympian before her high school graduation cap had even come off. By every reasonable measure, Adaejah Hodge looked like a young phenom on the fastest possible trajectory towards stardom. And then everything she had built nearly came apart. In August 2024, the same summer as that Lima gold medal and that Paris Olympic flag, Hodge tested positive for a banned substance called GW501516. Her gold and silver medals from the World U20 Championships were stripped. The Athletics Integrity Unit handed her a ban. She was 18 years old when that positive test was recorded. The ban ultimately lasted 17 months, from August 2024 through January 2026, though the public wouldn't learn about it until March 2026, 2 months after she'd already served it. The IU said the delayed announcement was necessary because Hodge had cooperated with a broader investigation, and going public earlier could have compromised it. Her reduced sentence reflected that cooperation. Think about what that actually meant. An 18-year-old already representing her country at the Olympics, suddenly erased from competition for an entire season. No 2025 NCAA Championships. No World Championships in Tokyo. While her competitors raced, set personal bests, and built momentum, Hodge trained alone, off the radar, with no certainty about when or whether the sport would let her back in. When the news finally became public months later, the internet did what the internet does. Hodge responded directly. "I know the truth behind it," she said. "A lot of people may say what they want to say, but those are just haters. That's the sacrifice nobody talks about in a highlight reel. Not a city left behind. Not a gym walked away from. A full year of a short athletic prime spent rebuilding trust in silence, while strangers online had already decided who she was." January 2026, Hodge is reinstated. She returns to the University of Georgia, a redshirt sophomore with something to prove, in a public that in many corners had already written her off. On March 14, 2026, in her very first major test back, she wins the NCAA Indoor Championship in the 200 meters. 2 days later, the IU formally announces her suspension to the public. Her redemption and her reckoning landed in the same week. Critics had their scoreline, a doping case, a stripped world U20 title, a gap year nobody could verify from the outside. The skeptics weren't unreasonable, they had a paper trail. What they didn't have was any sense of what was coming 5 weeks later. On April 18, 2026, at the Tom Jones Memorial in Gainesville, Florida, Hodge ran 77 seconds in the 100 meters, a British Virgin Islands national record, and a time that placed her second on the all-time NCAA list, just 0.02 of a second off Sha'Carri Richardson's mark. She'd given the track world a warning shot. Almost nobody outside the sport noticed. Quick one for the comments before we get to Eugene. Did you have Adaejah Hodge on your radar before this meet? I read every single one. Eugene, Oregon, Hayward Field. The 2026 NCAA Division I Outdoor Track and Field Championships were about to begin. 1 day earlier, on that very same track, Auburn's Jacoby Tharp had run 12.75 seconds in the 110-meter hurdles, breaking the outright world record. The meet was already being talked about as one of the most historic in collegiate history before the women's sprints had even started. Hodge entered the 100 meters as the second fastest woman in NCAA history, sitting just behind a record most people assumed was permanent. She had Richardson's number in her head. She knew exactly what she needed to run. Nobody outside her own camp was predicting she would actually get it. They should have been paying closer attention. Thursday evening, June 11, 2026, conditions were close to perfect. 77 degrees, sunny, a tailwind of 1.9 meters per second, just a tenth below the legal limit, on a track already considered one of the fastest surfaces in the world. Hodge exploded out of the blocks in the opening heat of the 100-meter preliminaries, 10,063. She did not just edge past Sha'Carri Richardson's 2019 record of 10.75, she obliterated it by 0.12 of a second. She became the outright fastest woman in NCAA history. She set a world U20 record. And she moved to 5th on the all-time list of every woman who has ever run the 100 meters, at any level, in any era. 10,063. Above her on that list sit only 4 names: Florence Griffith Joyner, Elaine Thompson Hara, Shelly Ann Fraser-Price, and Melissa Jefferson Wooden. That is the company a 20-year-old college sophomore had just joined, and it happened in a prelim, with the final still 2 days away. Here's what makes the number even louder: Sha'Carri Richardson's own personal best, her actual fastest time ever run, set in 2023 in Budapest when she won the world title, is 10.65 seconds. Hodge's time in a college heat was faster than the best the reigning world champion has ever produced in her entire career. And barely 72 hours later, while Hodge's name was still trending across track and field media, Richardson opened her own 2026 season at the LA Grand Prix, winning her race in 10:99, a perfectly respectable season opener and still more than 0.3 of a second slower than what a college sophomore had just run in a heat at Hayward Field. 2 days after the record, Hodge lined up for the 100-meter final. She did not win it. Jamaica's Shelly Ann Walker took the title in 10:88, denying Hodge a final round victory just 48 hours after she'd rewritten the record books. Hodge later said she moved on from that disappointment almost immediately, because hours later that same night, she had another final to run, the 200 meters. She had already qualified fastest. In the final, she pulled away from the field and crossed the line in 21:68, breaking Abby Steiner's collegiate record of 21:80, set back in 2022, and claiming her first individual NCAA outdoor title on the very same day she had lost the 100. A record-breaking run, a runner-up finish, and a national championship, all on one night at one meet by one 20-year-old who had been publicly written off as a doping cautionary tale just 3 months earlier. After everything, the positive test, the 17-month ban, the public reckoning, the runner-up finish in the 100 final, and a 100-meter time faster than the reigning world champion has ever legally run, here's what tells you everything about who Adaejah Hodge actually is. She didn't run from the doping conversation. She answered it directly, on the record, in her own words, saying that what happened was fuel to work even harder. That's not a press release. That's a 20-year-old standing in front of cameras, refusing to let one chapter define the entire story. Sha'Carri Richardson held that NCAA record for 7 years. She's a 3-time world champion and Olympic medalist, one of the most recognizable sprinters on the planet, and her own personal best now sits 0.02 of a second slower than what Hodge ran in a Thursday night heat. Richardson hasn't raced Hodge yet. But track and field has a way of eventually putting its fastest people on the same start line. Los Angeles, 2028. The Olympics return to American soil. Hodge will be 22. Richardson, by then a veteran approaching her 30s, will be chasing the one Olympic title that has so far eluded her outright individual 100-meter gold. If Hodge's trajectory holds, that start line in LA could feature the fastest field ever assembled in the history of the event, a former world champion against the redshirt sophomore, who, on one single Thursday night in Eugene, ran faster than Richardson ever has. So here's the question. Does Adaejah Hodge make the Olympic final in Los Angeles? And does she run under 10.63 before she even gets there? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to be here for whatever Adaejah Hodge does next, subscribe to Speed Academics right now, because this is only the beginning of her story.